Yeah.
Yes.
We're joined by Matthew and Jeannie. It's a workshop item, so they'll walk you through the slide deck. Matthew will talk if he wants questions during it or at the end of it. He'll set the scene. But one of the things that we want to be clear about is what we're asking of you today. It's not a decision-making forum, but what we are seeking is some of the feedback and interaction about your points on what you're about to receive. So I'll hand over to Matt and Jeannie, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Ken. I think it's probably best if I walk through these slides first and then we discuss and have questions at the conclusion of that.
Thank you.
So we're here to seek direction as to the timing and scale of the review of the Sunshine Bay, Frankton, Kelvin Heights Foreshore Management Plan. This is the beautiful cover of the Foreshore Management Plan from 1991, and the picture on the right highlights all the land that is currently included in this management plan. So it's quite extensive from Sunshine Bay to Kelvin Heights, including the golf club and the majority of the foreshore areas in between. The exception being Queenstown Bay, which was removed from this plan in 2016, which now has its own reserve management plan that we discussed earlier with that hydro attack item. The reason we are here today is we've had a request from KJET, and I acknowledge Vanessa from KJET's with us in the room today, to continue operation from Frankton beyond the current licence expiry. So they have a reserve licence to operate their jet boat commercial business from the Frankton Domain Reserve, and it expires at the end of January 2026. The reserve management plan that covers this area was adopted in 1991, so it is 34 years old. It has had some minor amendments to it since that time, but it's predominantly as it was in 1991. Within that reserve management plan, there are particular policies, including one that only permits commercial jet boat operations to operate from that Frankton domain until facilities are upgraded at Frankton Marina. So that has happened. Frankton, or Queenstown Marina as it is known, is open and operational. And so to continue operation, there needs to be a change to that reserve management plan. In that 34 years since the reserve management plan was adopted, there has been a lot of change in the Queenstown area, specifically in these areas surrounding the foreshores. The use of those reserves has changed and the surrounding populations. So a comprehensive review of the reserve management plan is required. That is agreed. This could be in stages, as we did with Queenstown Bay, in terms of taking out a section of that reserve management plan and doing a new reserve management plan for it, or it could be the whole reserve management plan that has not been decided as yet. So we're now seeking guidance as to how to deal with this request and how to review this reserve management plan. And there's a few options there. First of all, I'd just like to say that Council has agreed with KJET that they can continue to operate on a month-to-month basis until there is an outcome from a reserve management plan review. So we've acknowledged that the reserve management plan is 34 years old and a lot has changed in that time, and we think it is prudent to allow them to continue operating until the plan has been reviewed. So there's some options that we're seeking guidance for. We're not seeking a decision, but a comprehensive review of our reserve management plan when our work program allows for. And I think you probably all attended the workshop last month, which was presented by Christine, which outlined what the Parks Planning team does in upcoming work programs and work that is currently underway, which you've seen some of today in terms of the adjoining reserve, Kawerau Riverside reserves. Option one, or that first option, provides no certainty of tenure for KJET. As I said, we're allowing them to continue to operate on a month-to-month basis, but there's no certainty with that option. Option two would be to commence an immediate comprehensive review. And as I mentioned on that previous slide, that could be for a section of this reserve management plan or for the plan as the whole reserve area. We are yet to determine that, but it's whether how we undertake that review. But option two is saying it would be immediate, so that we would do that in response to the commercial request from KJET. And then option three would be just reviewing specific policies within the existing reserve management plan. So looking at those commercial policies within the Frankton foreshore. One of them is that policy which requires jet boat operations to relocate to Frankton Marina, but there are other policies that relate to any commercial activity must have a demonstrated public benefit, and there are numerous policies that cover activities in this area. So option 3, the main implication of that it would end up being a duplication of work, because we've indicated that the plan does need comprehensive review, and we intend to review that plan comprehensively. So undertaking a minor review of those specific policies now would just end up duplicating that work in the future when we're ready to undertake that comprehensive review. So I've tried to kind of summarise 3 pathways and the main implication of each of those pathways. So keen to have questions, comments.
Oh,
Chair.
You, Chair.
oh, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Just trying to get some clarity around number 1 there. No, you talked about month by month. It tells us here, number 1 there, no certainty of tenure for KJ. What? Just trying to get some clarity about what would it likely interrupt that tenure under number 1?
Well, it's just no term certain. So it's not saying we're going to give you 5 years to continue operating and they might want to invest in infrastructure or what it might be. A month-to-month lease doesn't give them any certainty. So, you know, they're not able to plan too far in the future because there is no long-term lease which they have in place. So I think their current licence, which they've had to occupy the reserve, was 5 years plus 5 years. So they had a 10-year period which they could invest accordingly for their occupation. But if we're on a month-to-month basis, that's not provided for, and they're unlikely to invest, or there's no certainty for them to continue operations.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
I'm just thinking with the month-to-month, it's also quite challenging, not just for infrastructure investment, but you're putting your products and pricing out 2 years in advance for agents, so they can't make a decision based on a month by month, so that's a challenge for them. Just wondering, we could in theory then isolate that Frankton Beach area and look at that as a review on its own, correct?
We could.
And then leave the rest till later, even though that will duplicate to an extent, won't it?
Yeah, like the options for review are like you can take a section of that out, exactly what happened with Queenstown Bay.
Yeah.
You remove a section from the reserve management plan and do a new plan for that section. And that might be from the marina down to the top of the Kawerau River,
Yep.
or it might be from Queenstown Gardens to the Kawerau River. Like that could be defined, just determining what that area might be.
Mm.
And that might be how we undertake our comprehensive review in the future too.
What does that look like in terms of workload and being able to step that up quicker versus a full-blown review of the whole area?
I think it would be a similar level of work,
Yeah.
just be more, different groups to consult with, but in terms of timeframes and given the high-profile nature of, Frankton Beach, I think it would be a similar timeframe and level of work.
Can I just make one more point? That the policy in the plan said that operation was permitted until the marina was constructed. The marina has been constructed, and KJet do operate from the marina. So they have a base at the marina and do operate from the marina. So this is like a secondary location or an additional option to their package. So when you say they're planning 2 years in advance, I don't necessarily think that would stop operation of those packages, but they might have to move them to one of their other locations if that was to be.
It would mean the transport would then go on Frankton Road with those airport transfers that they do with conference groups.
Potentially. I know they have another base down the Kawerau River as well, so depending on where they wanted to operate from.
It's on the other side of the river though, isn't
It
it?
is.
Any other questions?
Thank you. To do a full review with the current workload that you have, how far out would that be?
Within the team, based on the current work program at the moment, 12 months.
So not within a year, unless it was up
Yeah.
to strategic priority kind of alignment.
Yes.
Yeah. So because, and I sent an email around to signal this before the workshop in my thinking, but to me it is about keeping our options open for public transport right through that area. And I'm curious too as to whether the Sunshine Bay jetty as well, is that impacted by the Marina decision in 91? No, so it's just anything in the Frankton Arm that was impacted, that had to be removed after the marina was constructed?
Yeah, the direction in that management plan that would no further structures would be permitted. And then obviously in light of the marina being built, that structures will be removed and the activity will be consolidated at the marina.
Because I just think of what we've faced over this triennium. If I think back 3 years ago, you know, we were blue sky thinking about any off-rail transport. You know, we all thought it would be a miracle if we would see any conversations around gondolas or whooshes or ferries and, you know, in the last 12 months, we've definitely seen acknowledgement from government agencies that these things are getting traction. So blue skies thinking to me has grown some legs. And yeah, I'm just wondering, is it that we need to either look at our strategic priorities again and perhaps reordering some of the work chain ahead of us? Or is it an opportunity to be wary that we don't inadvertently close any doors and approach this in a piece-by-piece basis to try and carry some momentum? Because one of the big learnings I've had is how slowly the wheels of local government can turn, and yeah, whether I'm trying to get that balance right between protecting our environmental and recreational values of our reserves, and at the same time perhaps looking to opportunity where we could create better infrastructure, better facilities, better access, better recreational uplift, but do it in a time frame that means we don't also miss out on some things that are being offered here. So interested in the whole group's thought on that, particularly on where it's currently sitting and where, if we didn't go for a piecemeal, if we went for a full review, you're saying it would probably take 2 to 3 years to reach that outcome, or in year 2 of the next triennium before you could get to a new review, full review?
To commence the review, yes,
Yeah.
and then 6 to 12 months to undertake the review. If I could just talk to the public transport aspect of that though, so a piece of work that was undertaken 7 years ago now, just showing how long I've been here, the various reports I've written. So there was quite a bit of momentum back at that stage around the water transport option, looking at the options, and a piece of work was undertaken in this location to make an amendment both to the reserve management plan and to the designation, and consent was sought and given for a public transport jetty in this area. It's actually further
talking about
up towards Allen Creek, no. Further up towards the junction of Boys Crescent and Allen Crescent. A design has been done for a jetty that would service public transport, and the various plans were amended to accommodate that. So there was an outline plan put through because it's got a designation for reserve purposes. The reserve purposes designation was amended to enable a public transport jetty, and the reserve management plan was also subsequently amended to still retain that no further new structures except for a jetty that would provide for public transport to be operated either by council or a commercial operator. So we've actually got quite far down the path for enabling that service. Because it is a designation for recreation use, it didn't go as far as being a resource consent for the commercial activity itself of operating public transport service, because that would go over the whole lake and there was many other things that needed to be considered. However, the reserve planning documents do already enable a water transport, public transport option.
But it just doesn't have a handshake with the community as far as KG goes, is that what we're
So we did public consultation at the time. Well, we did a minor amendment, but we went out for public consultation. There were 37 submissions. KG did submit as well, but at that time it was to continue access along the Frankton track down to the jetty. So there was, the majority of the submissions did support the public water transport service, but there were plenty of comments around retaining and protecting the open space and it not becoming a large car park, etc. But it was quite prescriptive. It was around a public transport service. It wasn't around commercial recreation activities.
I'm just going to add just quickly, it's Esther next and then yourself, Lou, but just picking up on your point sort of regarding the programming. So as we're seeking its feedback, we will then need to operationalise the work plan, and depending on what the committee gives us as some guidance, we'll report back on that.
So there could be some movement.
We've seen, as you've experienced, we've certainly got a comprehensive dance card.
Yeah.
So, you know, it'll sit with the team, and we've got Dave and Brianna and Jenny and Matt, I think, and Sophie and Kat, so we can work our way through it. But yeah, you know, it's the priority across this. And so your points are well made in that space.
Thank you. I think I've got 4 questions. So looking at the direction of going with the first option, which gives no certainty of tenure for KJET, I just wanted to talk about the actual month-to-month situation that we will have as of 2026. Can that be changed?
So that's an agreement within their existing licence. So their licence has a provision that allows them to continue operation beyond expiry on a month-to-month basis by agreement with council. And foreshadowing this, we have agreed to allow them to continue to operate until there's an outcome of a reserve management plan. So that would be unlikely to change. We can't issue a new licence or change the agreement, but we've agreed for them to be on a month-to-month basis until any plan review has been undertaken.
Okay. All right. And just to confirm, so they have a concession which allows them to go to the main town pier until 2029. Is that correct? From wherever it would go from, like if it changed to the marina, their concession?
I think they have a lease. I can't speak too much about that, but I think they have a lease for the main town pier.
Until 2029?
But we can check, and we can check and report back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is 2029.
Thank you.
We've checked and we've reported back.
Okay.
That's how we roll. Thank you, Esther.
All right, so, okay, I'll park that one for a moment then. So from officers' point of view, obviously this reserve management plan is a vast area, with Queenstown Bay now removed from it. With your experience of writing and reviewing reserve management plans, do you think, what are the advantages or disadvantages if we were to break that up into, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but yeah, what are the advantages, do you think, if we were to break it up into segments?
I think you would respond to more directly to the individual communities, the issues and opportunities. We all know 31 years ago, we had Queenstown Town Centre, and then the rest of the foreshore areas were probably not that dissimilar, holiday houses, some residential, and access to the water, a lot of water-based recreation. That has changed significantly for some of those areas, if not all of those areas, but I guess the demands and the use for each of the sections, if you like, they're similar, but they are quite specific to each of those areas as well. So I think that would be an advantage. You would get a management plan that would respond specifically to whichever areas you decided to break it up into.
Okay.
The Queenstown Pay, for sure, which I also wrote, was done in response to increasing commercial pressure and the community wanting to, I guess, have a plan that responded to the community's desires, but also to the commercial requests and needs for those areas as well.
Okay, and so you've outlined some of the advantages. Do you think there's any disadvantages of
Well,
breaking it up?
efficiency, you know, you'd be writing one management plan versus 3 or 4. It'd take 3 or 4 times as long.
Yeah, I mean, where the question is coming from really is around the need to meet specific communities, but also the growing demand, obviously, with, you know, what we've spoken about a lot is public transport and ferries. So
that arguably is the same for all of those areas as well. You know, there's many similarities and there are some differences as well. So
okay.
Just the pressures are probably greater in some of the areas than others at this moment in time.
And I guess I just wanted to highlight that a reserve management plan is obviously hugely, one of the main purposes, public benefit. And so whilst I agree we don't want to close any doors to what public transport might look like, for example, which is public benefit. So you've mentioned some of the aspects of some of the enablers that were put in 7 years ago, but they, under review, would probably be updated as well.
Yes.
So do you think if we look at a kind of full, sorry, let me just reread the options. If we were to look at the top one, which is a comprehensive full or partial review, do you see that would close any options at all for public services or public benefit?
I mean, can't predict what would happen. Given the level of support in the last round of public engagement for this, I think that's a pretty good indication that it is quite well supported by the public.
Yeah.
In balance with their public open space use of this area as well. And I think that a comprehensive review would also allow that feedback to come to the decision-making table as well. It is an increasingly busy and popular picnicking, swimming area in the summer as well. In fact, it's incredibly busy now in the summer down there. So it would enable that comprehensive, more cohesive consultation for everybody to have a say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Esther.
Judy, just going back to what you were talking about previously about the other jetty, that required council to build that one?
Well, under the designation, the requiring authority is the council. They, delivering the public work. There are ways in which others can build it for that public work. But ultimately, council as a requiring authority is responsible for that.
And would have it allowed for commercial?
On behalf of the public work, yes.
Use.
So specifically the policies that were updated was that it was a public transport service, but that could also be operated by a commercial operator. But the specific change was for public transport, as opposed to a commercial activity that wasn't delivering public transport.
So you could run a ferry there, but you couldn't pick up an airport transfer for conference attendees or something like that? Like how specific, would that get quite narrow around?
Well, I presume that's what is the definition in the district plan, public transport. Yeah.
Right. But not for a jet boat ride, just that.
That is commercial recreation.
That's commercial recreation.
that might also be able to operate from that jetty. It would just need a different resource consent.
Any other questions? I've just got a couple of comments. Barry, you got a question?
Yeah, just to obviously, apart from this issue, the reserve management plan has worked pretty well. You've sort of said that there's not too many other.
The policies and objectives were well written at the time.
Yep.
And we haven't had cause to update them aside from 7 years ago. So yeah, based on that, they appear to be working quite well.
They're still operational, they're still referenced and inform how we take forward requests and decisions. And so even though it's 34 years, however, as you've learned through the period, the team have brought a lot of reserve management plans to this table in the last period, and they do get looked at as part of that commitment. So that's hence the work program. It's the timing within that current work program for this particular piece of work.
And it obviously wasn't fit for purpose in 2016 for the Queenstown Bay area, which is the driver for that being pulled out and updated separately.
So if there was a partial review dealing with a specific area, is that potentially a quicker process than doing a full review?
So there's the three different options up there, and I guess we could break them down into geographic areas. So you would either amend the full plan all the way from Sunshine Bay around to Kelvin Heights, or you would do a section for Frankton Beach, and council would determine where that started and finished, or you would be location specific and seek to amend the specific policies that currently don't provide a pathway for KG to continue operation there. My view is that it would be a similar level of work to do Sunshine Bay to Kelvin Heights than it would be to do Frankton Beach. However, it's also my view that the Frankton Beach area, it could be quite a concise, relevant plan just to apply to that area.
Thank you.
Just one other point.
Sorry, I take it away.
We're seeking direction on timing as well. So the scale of the review, but also timing. So the first option that up there is when our work program allows, and that's acknowledging the existing work that we have and upcoming work. So that's whether we're prioritising the request and a review, whether it be a review of the plan or just of the specific policies in response to that commercial request, or back to option one when our work program allows. So it's the timing of...
And just reminding, it's not a decision we're seeking today, it's the feedback which you've provided,
Can I ask another quick question?
Sure.
I guess the consent gives the kind of legal framework, but I would imagine that because there's kind of concurrent things, there's moving parts here. Obviously, KJET has no certainty with month by month, but the sentiment, I think, is that, we undergo the work in whichever way, and then it's reviewed at that point, which gives KJET some certainty that it's not going to be pulled from under them within 3 months, for example. So I guess it is sentiment, but I just wanted to kind of express that would that be true, do you think?
Yeah, we've expressed that we will allow them to continue to operate on a month-by-month basis until the review's been undertaken. So, and based on what we've just said, if we go with our normal program, that might commence in a year, it might take a year to, so they've got a set time frame that they're allowed to operate there from.
Yeah, great, thank you, just wanted to confirm.
Oh no, your point's well made. We've recognised the parties need to have an understanding of that pathway. And as Matthew's pointed that out.
Could I ask too, I suppose the time and consideration, I'm thinking along our bigger picture of a regional deal, trying to bring together local voices and central government voices across these 5 integrated packages, and one of them is an integrated transport thinking plan. And we're hearing a lot of momentum around completing any of those conversations within an 18-month timeframe. And what I'm hearing is that if you're going to be making investment as a significant stakeholder in the future of our commuter networks and our public transport networks, then you might be seeking more certainty quicker than a couple of year timeframe to just participate in those strategic planning conversations. Not even that it's an absolute deliverable at the end of, I'm not putting any assumptions out there as to what a regional deal will or even could potentially achieve for us. I'm just, again, I come back to this timing piece of going, what is the most appropriate and expedient pathway to make sure that we're not closing doors and that we're enabling a move away from our biggest challenge, which is congestion, and what are the ways that we're trying to enable that while still protecting our public amenity and reserve space. And some of the conversation of working on the Freedom Camping one recently was that, Lynn's land or even facilities like these sorts of things out to the future, we might be able to tie in with provision of facilities and toilets and parking and things to enable an uplift in recreational amenity in some of these spaces. I really hear you and appreciate the workload you're all under, because I know how full that dance card is and how significant every piece of work is and which ones do we allow to rise to the surface. I'm sort of leaning towards not a little location, one commercial operator only specific approach, but around, are we looking at just really trying to enable that blue-green transport piece is just such a big key for me around fixing the congestion. So I'd like to see there be a balance that somehow we could really look after our reserves while bringing some pace to some of the decisions. So get stuck in that middle point.
I appreciate the feedback.
My steer, if you're looking for one today, would be option 2 or 3. That's in front of us at the moment. Just from a commercial perspective, if you've got a little bit more certainty and having to wait 2 years for a review is probably going to take too long for them to commit to some decisions that they have to make around a future investment. So that would be my steer for today. I'm quite keen to see a sort of Frankton Beach Reserve management plan. It's not music to your ears, I know, but I think that area in particular probably has a heavier traffic demand and future demand than some of the other areas of the lake, which is why I tend to think it probably needs to sit on its own. And so that would be my steer for today.
Thank you. Esther?
I'm leaning towards option 1, which is comprehensive, and I'd probably go for a full review. I think it would be great to hear some feedback on time, you said 12 months, so I wonder if we were to guide us and kind of then guiding you, if we could say before December 2026, could we undertake the work, then I think it gives some kind of assurance to the commercial entity that's wanting this, that they actually, because otherwise it's like, when time allows, well, we could say that's 5 years' time. So I think it's essential that we do a full review, given that we've got such a huge land area that we're dealing with here, underwater area, and given everything that Lisa's just said as well about regional deals and transportation, etc. So I'm definitely leaning towards 1, but I think to give some timescale to KJET would be courteous.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
Just to one of Lisa's.
Oh, hang on. Could we just go with Ferg and then come back to that? Yeah, thanks.
Hold that thought.
Thank you, Chair, and trying to find a steer here. I think for me, once again, we get a reserve management plan that's was last looked at back in 1991, you know, and our community has changed, you know, so much in that time, let alone over the last 10 years or 5 years, you know. So for me, and bearing in mind this is the Community and Services Committee, is let the community have their say, you know. So I'm sort of steering it too here and get on with it and get it sorted. That's my steer, sorry.
Thanks, Ferg, and that would be like Matt, full or partial?
Well, I quite like what Matt mentioned in terms of Franklin Beach, but yeah, I'll go partial, I think. Bring that one out because it's a pretty niche sort of area, but I can see how it ties into all the others as well, but
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, partial for me, thank you at this point.
Barry or Cody, do you have any
Steer.
feedback?
Given that despite the years since it was established, in the main it's still substantially relevant. I'm leaning towards 2, partial, Franklin Beach area.
Thank you, Barry. You've got the last word again, Cody.
Not my intention. I'm trying to get ahead of it, to be honest, because I understand a bit of the background, and I struggle with knowing the right path forward because I understand what's trying to happen. My instinct is more shared with Esther's comments around comprehensive reserve management plan in full when the work program allows. There is a lot of uncertainty at the moment around regional deals and a lot of plans that may be relevant to what happens in operation. I think the giving courtesy to the length of time that's realistically going to take is going to be the middle ground that would be more palatable, I imagine, for the commercial operator. And I understand it's a sensitive topic, so it feels like I'm not quite getting a really I'm struggling to.
And look, it's like I say, as we know, this isn't a decision making. It's actually quite useful because, you know, clearly what we will then do is just take on board the feedback. We need to shape that up with our work program and then report back to the client and then also work our way through this going forward. So fundamentally, you know, we're not holding your feet to the fire today. But what we're really keen to do is just understand, you know, where this fits within the wider context. And just before you answer, you know, like this is now one of the key jewels left outside of the rest of the reserve management planning the team have actually updated and brought back to this table in recent times. So when we take a lens back, you know, just regardless of what's brought us to the table or who, actually it's 34 years of age, still operational, but it no longer is as modern as what we've brought back over the last 18 months for the rest of the Whakatapu Basin.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Well, we'll just be going to...
Yeah, well, I was just going to say the plan's older than I am, and activation of that space for the public, it would be, you know, great to see, and it'd be great to sort of have a holistic strategy around all users that really guides a lot of decision making. So I think it's relevant in terms of workload and stuff. Then we'll take guidance on. Esther, go for it.
Well, Jeannie, you've been waiting a long time. Do you want to?
I just want to speak again to the public transport, so that our amendments and updates then were done working closely with property and infrastructure, and it was their design and their request for the jetty and the location and the design that it was. So we worked closely with that team again around any future updates as well. We're led by their needs as to where the public transport jetty requests landed.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I guess I just wanted to, I don't know, from my point of view, I think we need to reiterate that it's the public benefit for everybody. And I think a commercial entity has kind of triggered this discussion point, but I think what it brings up is, you know, what we've all kind of discussed is that it's probably timely to have a review. I also recognise the value that commercial entities can bring because they can serve a purpose to public benefit. But I think the trigger point, what I'm understanding from the trigger point at the moment is not actually about public benefit right now in terms of its usage today. Maybe that's just what I've inferred from it. So yeah, I guess I just wanted us to hold kind of the holistic view of the public benefit to all.
Yes, and I think you probably referenced it well. We're dealing with a request from a commercial party, but not in isolation. If you look at a lot across the 2,500 hectares of reserve that we manage on behalf of the community, there are a number of examples that we have a standing relationship with a commercial entity that will be operating out of some of these spaces. So we certainly have a track record. It's not unusual, but your point's well made. And even in the recent RMPs we've brought to this table, and the community board on the other side of the hill, those aspects have been reflected back through that public wide lens of how we interact with those spaces, and what the RMPs often land on is a compromise.
Yep.
Once you start threading all the different bits of feedback, and hence why they take that period of time, because of the way that we need to under the Act, but also B, the way the team have actually got a blueprint now of how to actually go out and engage with the wider community to make sure those voices are heard through. So that's part of this. There's a couple of comments just from me, and like I say, it's not a decision-making forum, but it's really useful to get this feedback. I'm not sure Jeannie and Matt kept bloody tabs on it, I'm sorry, but we've certainly got some directives, and what we need to do is actually just take on board that feedback and then come back. Clearly there's no other committee within the triennium, but we've got a party that we need to keep informed about what decision we're going to make. We need to rationalise the feedback against what we've got on our current program. We also need to think about, and Jeannie's made a really valuable point, we do a partial, at some point we end up with another part. So without doing anything with any intent, at some point further down, probably won't be my remit, but someone's then going to have two RMPs to deal with, not one. So, there's a few factors that you've quite clearly articulated. Future proofing, as you pointed out, Lisa, around traffic and transport and other demands, the regional deals, etc., etc. And I think too, the team is stepped through the issue of we realise we're dealing with a party, but as soon as we go out, we'll be dealing with others. If you do a partial versus a full, what does that look like? And given that this is truly world-class landscape and environment, we really do know that once we head off down this path, there will be significant interest, as Jeannie's touched on, and Matthew. So I'm not sure if Matthew or Jenny, you need any more clarity, or is any more points you want to ask of, or anyone else at this table, but we've found the conversation useful. We purposely challenged ourselves about how to bring this to this table in a workshop format. We've seen the most appropriate in terms of creating the conversation which we've had with you today. Any other points from you two?
With the reserve management plans, I know some of the comments is around being ideological or being sort of too broad brushed, or just, does it take into consideration seasonality in terms of use cases? Because I look at the access for a lot of public in summer and swimming and all the other stuff, and then look at how that access may change throughout the winter, looking at photos of them sitting with beanies and puffer jackets and the sort of variations that we have that are more seasonally minded. It's just an open question to throw in there. Sorry, it's a very intense room.
I think that would typically be where the licence agreement would address those specifics of the activity. So the management plan would be quite high level and go, what type of activity is appropriate, and then the specifics of timeframes and conditions and duration and stuff is dealt with in the licence.
Yes. Look, it's a good point. I think, as Jenny, a good example. Have you got any? I think of mountain biking. Some of that's seasonal, and it's dealt with through the appropriate channel. So we've got a reserve management plan that allows for activities, and then it's down to the way the team works with the provider around how that actually marries up with the timeframes and making sure we're looking after the track network to its best. Through winter you might have different barriers in it, but certainly factors that can be looked at as we take forward the reserve management plan.
That's appreciated, and thank you for reflecting that back, because I think all anyone really wanting to argue is just some practicality and, common sense aspects when it allows for it, so.
And that, what you just said then, can make me think too, mountain biking. The two quotes I really take away from this committee over our time together has been one that originated out of the RMPs up here, which was creating a handshake with the community. And also, Ken, your phrase sticks with me, that we are managers of a world-class estate, 2,500 hectares of presentation of a world-class estate. And we don't have funding for a lot of social infrastructure or any enhancement of our parks and reserves. So I've taken those two statements to not just mean a handshake with our community, which is so important, to enact and enable these public benefits of all of our reserves, but also with all stakeholders, whether it's iwi, private operators, user groups, seasonal user groups, and mountain biking. I look at what came to our table through this triennium, where we have had private investors or funders come to the party like that and enable us to bring projects forward, like what's happening at Tohu, that we wouldn't have been able to achieve in as quick a time frame without a handshake with a stakeholder that enabled us to uplift public benefit. And I know it's a touchy subject as far as what's an appropriate pathway to make sure that we don't have conflicts and we're not cherry picking winners. But what we are seeing is people that really care about this place coming forward, willing to invest and partner with us in a future that we can't afford publicly on our own. So I'd just like to acknowledge that we've got opportunity there, and I hope we can strike a balance in the future where those relationships are conducted in integrity and able to get us to the public benefit of PT quicker, because although the marina's there, we have put it in the most congested piece of roading infrastructure in the district. And the thought that that might be the future sole focus of our ferry arrivals and departures, and then trying to disperse them along Frankton Road. I'd just like to think that we could think in a more distributed network and make sure that we're really enabling free movement trip by trip around our blue network. And I think this is a chance to perhaps put a little bit of pace under it while still treading carefully and not messing the place up, because we don't want to wreck it, but look after the place.
Thanks, Lisa.
Apologies, I have to go.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
Clarification.
Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, yeah.
So option 1 and option 2 are actually very similar, except for the word immediate.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does immediate look like in terms of time frame?
We would operate.
Have to drop other projects.
And it would be coming back to the next meeting of the Community and Services Committee
Yes.
post-election, initiating that process. So that would be coming back.
So November-ish.
Yeah, and as probably, whenever we get that, and as Jenny's packing up, I think it is important we just reflect back, I'll tell you where I've got to it. We've got the directive partial full, pretty much looking towards full, but with the focus of immediacy from this committee.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
Am I reading the tea leaves right?
Yep.
Well, for
My interpretation was there were a couple that were saying
Partial or full?
you kind of more comprehensive, but within the next year as an absolute maximum. So it's
Totally.
as soon as
So-
possible, but within the next year.
So some immediacy.
yeah, so that's where that immediate word comes in.
Yeah.
So-
How long is that?
So what we would then be required to do, the first committee is come back and actually give you an outline of what that looks like, and actually being really clear too about what we may not be getting to in that priority that we're pushing further down.
Yeah. That's
But this gives us the clarity, and the feedback we're seeking is that we will report back at
And
the first
we've
committee.
given this advice without any understanding of what gets published as well, so.
Yeah, and we get that caveat.
And then I
actually,
think
this
we
is
have
within the
to,
context of this conversation,
we have
right?
to ask ourselves then, is this more of a priority than the other work?
Well,
If we're
just,
making it immediate, that's the question that needs to
yeah,
be.
and we can build that in and make it clear as part of what we are looking at, either have to manage concurrently or look at how we actually resource this. But, a significant piece of work as you've all covered on this.
We won't be here anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, you will.
Right, we'll wrap it up there.
Thanks again.
Thank you.